Hello, this is the Watchdog, and welcome back to Fun with Watches. If watches weren't fun, you'd only need one. Today we're going to be reviewing the Pagani design PD-1662 GMT root beer. Let's start out with the wrist check. It's Saturday, so I'm going to do Seiko Saturday. I'm wearing my Seiko SRPD 59. Looks a lot like a pumpkin. I don't have two Seikos, so Grogo is wearing my Benyar BY 5163. Grogo and Princess Leia joined the New Republic Symphony Orchestra. During rehearsal, the princess really needed to use the bathroom, but the lock was broken and she couldn't open the door. The conductor asked if anyone was a locksmith, and the oboe first chair raised his hand. The princess said, "Help me, oboe one, to go pee. You're my only hope." Here's the watch. This watch is an homage to the Rolex GMT Master 2 root beer. Now I can stop saying homage now and just start calling it a root beer, because Rolex doesn't own the trademark root beer. Root beer is just a nickname. The Rolex is a two-tone with real rose gold, 18 karat. But you're not going to get real gold in the Pagani design. You're not even going to get gold plating. This is just a gold colored coating. Actually, if you look at it closely, it looks more of a copper color than it does a gold color. But that still looks fine. It's a nice looking piece. All Rolex GMTs are extremely popular and really hard to get, especially if you want to get it at MSRP. But you can order this Pagani design right now from AliExpress, and you'll get it with no problem. This is my very first Pagani design GMT. They also have a Pepsi, a Batman, and a Coke. I chose the root beer because it was fairly new for Pagani design, and it seems quite popular. It was often sold out at the different AliExpress stores I looked at. The watch is 40.1 millimeters at the bezel, 47.8 millimeters lug to lug, 12.7 millimeters thick. I never measure at the Cyclops, just the crystal. 20 millimeter lug width, and weighs 147 grams with 2 links removed. The watch is basically the perfect size. It can be wearable by small and large wrists. The watch has a 120 click unidirectional bezel with a ceramic insert. I verified that it is indeed 120 click because I've had Pagani design watches before where they were 90 click. A GMT should have a bidirectional bezel that's 24 click, but most affordable GMTs do not because they share the design and parts with their diver watch counterparts. At least 24 divides into 120 evenly because it does not with 60 or 90. The bezel action is really good. Solid clicks, but just the right amount of resistance. Not too heavy, not too light. I've been very happy with Pagani design bezel action. I know a lot of people complain about them, but I've been very pleased. There is no lume on the bezel, which is fairly standard for a GMT watch. You wouldn't have a lume pip on a GMT because it's not a timing bezel. So if you were going to lume the bezel, you would have to lume the entire thing. Has a black dial with no sunburst effect. Has the Pagani design branding and logo printed on the top of the dial. Then on the bottom it says GMT automatic, water resistant, and then it gives the depth rating of 100 meters. They could have dropped a line. I don't see why they would need to put water resistant and the depth rating. They could have just had the depth rating and make the dial a little bit less cluttered. It has gold toned hands with lume, Mercedes hour hand, lollipop second hand, and the Arrow GMT hand. The GMT hand is the same color as the other 3 hands, which is unusual for a GMT watch. Usually they have the GMT hand a different color, but that's how Rolex does it on their root beer, so I'm sure Pagani design wanted to match the Rolex. Has a stainless steel case that's polished on the sides here, but brushed on the tops and bottoms. Has a gold colored screw down crown with crown guards. has a sapphire crystal with Cyclops. The Cyclops does a good job of magnifying the date, but look at that reflection. It really catches the light and it makes it really hard to read the date. Plus, the Cyclops has this weird effect where it makes the date look farther away even though it's bigger. It probably would have been better if they just left the Cyclops off, but then it wouldn't look like the Rolex. It has a display screw-down case back. It shows off the Pearl DG5833 GMT movement. This is my first experience with this movement. I'm pleased to see that the rotor is signed by Pagani Design. It looks kind of nice. Every Pagani Design watch I've had with an NH35, the rotor's been the stock rotor, very plain looking. So that looks really nice. Unfortunately, when you look past the rotor, there's really not much to see. On this side of the movement, you can see the escapement wheel and one of this gear that's red. But if you look at the other side, there's really nothing to see. So it would have been fine if they didn't have a display case back, but I guess that's fine too. This is a 3 Hertz hand winding movement that hacks. Let me go ahead and show it to you on the time graph. Right now it's running 6 seconds fast, which isn't too bad. It's always better to be a little fast and a little slow. This is not a true GMT watch because it doesn't have an independently set jumping hour hand. That means when you travel and change time zones or daylight savings rolls around again, you have to set the watch and then set the GMT hand again if you want it to be accurate. When you pull the crown to the second position, you turn the crown clockwise to set the date. And you turn the crown counterclockwise to set the GMT hand. So the GMT hand moves only in one direction. So if you want to set the GMT hand, if you go too far, it's like, oops, I went too far, then you have to go all the way around again to set it again. Makes setting the GMT hand a little tedious. Also, there's this one feature where you go to set the GMT hand, and then you press in the crown, and the GMT hand jumps. Well, fortunately, a viewer of mine gave me a solution to this. So when you go to set the GMT hand, when you get it right where you want to, turn the crown in the opposite direction just a little bit, then push it in and it doesn't jump. It would have been nice if the GMT hand was a jumping hand that jumped hour to hour instead of a smooth setting hand. Since setting the GMT hand is such a pain on a budget GMT watch, many people just use it as a 24-hour hand for local time so they can set it and forget it. Then you can use the bezel to track the second time zone or a GMT time. The watch has solid end links and it has this shellfish style bracelet. Can't say the official word. This is not a true 3-link bracelet though. These are single links made to look like a 3-link. This bracelet was the only option for the root beer. But if you get the other colorways, then you could get the Happy Party bracelet, the 5-link bracelet that is. Or you could get a rubber strap. Please, please, please do not buy the rubber strap. Always get your watch on a bracelet if that's available. You can always pick up a rubber strap cheap, but it's hard to find a matching bracelet for a watch. The bracelet has screw pins for adjustment links, and they're pretty big heads, so you don't need the completely tiny screwdriver. And they come out nice, and I've had no issues with the screws coming undone, so you don't need to put any Loctite on them or anything. Some nicer, higher end watches come with Loctite on the screws, which makes it a real pain to remove links. I had to remove 2 links to fit this watch on my 7.5-inch wrist. It has a milled clasp with micro adjusts. The micro adjusts are slots inside the clasp rather than holes on the side. And it's not a toolless micro adjust where you can adjust it without a tool. You have to loosen it up here and then still put a tool in there to change the slots, and it's kind of difficult. Personally, I'd rather have them put holes on the side of the clasp to make it easier to use the micro adjust. Now, one nice thing though about this system though is it gives you a little bit, you can loosen the bracelet just a little bit by pulling this out. So if you do have a hot day where your wrist swells, you can loosen the bracelet without using a tool. The clasp also has this safety latch. And the clasp, rather than having push buttons, you just pull on this edge here and it comes right out. It works really nice. Here's the watch at my 7.5-inch wrist. Wears really nice, not too heavy. I'm not going to show you the watch on other straps because what's the point? The bracelet is part of the look. If you want this root beer design, you want the two-tone. Here we are in the Lume room. Let's just see the watch's Lume. I'm not going to do a side-by-side comparison because this is, what's the point? This is a GMT. This is not a dive watch. So I'm sure the Lume will be decent but not spectacular. So let's give it a good charge with the UV flashlight. Standard disclaimer, I need to use the UV flashlight because my camera does not do low light very well. So now that we've charged it, let's go ahead and kill the lights. And there's the Lume. As you can see, it's pretty good. It's not bad. Once again, the bezel isn't lumed at all. So with the GMT, you either lume the whole thing or you don't bother because there's no point of a lume pip. So I would rate the Lume as pretty good. As you can see, it's got a blue tint, not green. So that's probably BGW9 and not the C3. So I say the Lume is good. Also, when I wear this watch, when I go from a really light room to a really dark room, I can usually see the Lume, which is not the case with a lot of cheaper Lumes. What do I like about this watch? Well, they really nailed the look. This looks a lot like a root beer. Nice looking ceramic bezel. The two-tone looks really nice. It's fairly thin for an automatic. And it's nice to see Pagani design pretty up a rotor for a change. What are my gripes and groans? Super reflective Cyclops makes the date hard to see. Even though it does a decent job of magnifying, it's still hard to see the date. The micro adjust is a real pain to use. I wish they would have just put holes on the side of the clasp and made it easier. And the GMT hand is really tedious to set. So if you ever change time zones and want your GMT hand to show GMT time, you got to set it every time. Do I recommend this watch? Yes, I do. Despite the fact that the GMT hand is a pain to set, most people don't buy a GMT watch to track 3 time zones. They buy it for the pretty bezel. If you like the pretty root beer bezel, then you can't go wrong with this watch. Well, thank you for watching my review of the Pagani Design 1662 GMT root beer. Be sure and like and subscribe to my channel, and I will be back with another unboxing or review. Bye.